Claire's footsteps echoed through the dimly lit hallways of the abandoned warehouse. As the new night shift security guard, she had expected the job to be uneventful, just a few hours of monotony punctuated by the occasional security check. What she hadn't anticipated was the oppressive silence that seemed to thicken with every passing minute, or the disquieting sense of being watched. The warehouse, once a bustling hub of industrial activity, now lay dormant, its once efficient machinery now rusty relics of a bygone era. The flickering fluorescent lights above cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, transforming the abandoned space into a labyrinth of dark corners and unsettling shapes. Claire checked her watch just past midnight. The silence was almost tangible, pressing in on her from all sides. Claire's radio crackled to life, startling her. "All clear and zone free," the voice of her colleague, Tom, said. His voice was oddly calm, as if the silence hadn't penetrated his own quarters. Claire responded with a brief acknowledgement and continued her rounds, each step growing heavier with the weight of the silence. As she passed the loading docks, she noticed something peculiar, a faint glow coming from one of the long-abandoned freight elevators. Claire frowned. The elevator hadn't worked in years, and yet it hummed with an eerie, almost imperceptible light. She approached it cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The light flickered out as she neared, plunging the area into an unsettling pitch black. Claire pressed the button to call the elevator. And to her surprise, the door creaked open with a slow, reluctant groan. Inside, she saw nothing but dust-covered walls and an empty cabin. Shaking her head, she muttered to herself, "Just a malfunction." As she turned to leave, the sound of a metallic clang resonated from the dark recesses of the warehouse. Claire frowned, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't alone. She could feel it, an inexplicable presence that seemed to be following her every move. Desperate to find a logical explanation, Claire decided to investigate the source of the noise. She made her way toward the source, her flashlight beam darting nervously across the vast, shadowy expanse. The clanging sound grew louder, rhythmic and unnerving. It seemed to be coming from the old maintenance room, a place she had been instructed to avoid. But curiosity got the better of her. The door to the maintenance room was slightly ajar, the dim glow of her flashlight revealing a mess of disorganized tools and broken equipment. Claire peered inside. In the center of the room stood a large, rusted machine, its gears slowly turning with a grinding noise. The machine, long inactive, had somehow come to life. Her breath hitched in her throat. As she stepped inside, the machine's clanging grew frantic, and she noticed something chilling. Handwritten notes scattered across the floor, detailing strange experiments and incomprehensible symbols. Her flashlight flickered erratically, casting long, trembling shadows that seemed to dance in time with the machine's mechanical heartbeat. Suddenly, the machine stopped with a violent shudder, and the room was plunged into darkness. Claire's flashlight died, leaving her in a void of silence and fear. She fumbled with the flashlight, her fingers trembling. When the light finally flickered back on, the notes had vanished. Her heart raced as she turned around, only to find the room empty and quiet. Her radio crackled again, jolting her. Tom's voice came through, but it was distorted and filled with static. "Claire, you need to leave now." Panic surged through Claire. She turned to leave the maintenance room, but found the door now firmly shut. She pounded on it, but no sound emerged from the other side. Her breaths came in short, ragged gasps as the oppressive silence closed in around her. Desperation drove her to the small window in the room. She tried to open it, but it was stuck. The oppressive weight of the silence was almost suffocating. The only sound was her own frantic breathing. A shadow moved in the corner of her eye, and she spun around, her flashlight illuminating a dark figure standing in the doorway. The figure was tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. Its presence was otherworldly, emanating a sense of malevolence that made her skin crawl. It was dressed in the remnants of old security guard uniform, but its face was obscured by a dark hood. Claire's instincts screamed at her to run. She scrambled to the window, forcing it open and climbing through. She landed hard on the ground outside and ran toward the main entrance of the warehouse, her heart racing and her legs pumping with adrenaline. As she burst through the front doors and into the open night air, she looked back at the warehouse. The flickering lights had all gone out, leaving it a dark silhouette against the sky. The warehouse seemed to swallow the darkness around it, its emptiness now a looming presence that threatened to engulf anyone who dared to enter. Claire staggered to her car, slamming the door shut behind her. She glanced at the building one last time, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw the shadowy figure watching her from a window high above. She started the engine and drove away, the memory of those haunting eyes etched into her mind. The next day, Claire learned that Tom had disappeared. His last communication had been a garbled, panicked message just like the one she'd received. The warehouse was shut down for an investigation, but no one could explain the strange occurrences or the unsettling presence that Claire had encountered. Claire never returned to the warehouse. The memory of that night haunted her dreams and lurked in the corners of her waking hours. The once familiar silence of the night shift had been forever tainted by the terror of that eerie, dark warehouse, and though she was free from its grasp, the shadow of the night she had survived would follow her wherever she went, a grim reminder of the true horror of being alone in the dark.